Hello, hi. Is that for me? All right, it's go time. Hello, welcome to the Longmont Sustainability Issues Candidates Forum. My name is Ryan Schutz. I'll be your host for the night. I am the Executive Director of Sustainable Resilient Longmont. SRL is Longmont's sustainability nonprofit. We focus on contributing to cultivate a sustainable and thriving city. We support the 3 pillars of sustainability: environmental protection, responsible economic growth, and social equity. We are here tonight to push forward democracy and informed voting. Thank you for joining us. To start off, I would like to introduce our interpreter, Rosabelle Rice. She will explain how the interpretation is going to work in Spanish, and then we will turn on the interpretation and she will begin interpreting. Rosabelle, please.
Sí, muy buenas noches. Vamos a tener interpretación simultánea. Dentro de un momento van a ver un globo terráqueo, van a pulsar en eso, van a escoger español y van a escuchar perfectamente. Si están ustedes en un celular, van a ir a donde están los 3 puntitos, escogen interpretación, luego español. Bueno, espero que disfruten de la interpretación hoy noche.
All right, thank you very much, Rosabelle. We should have translation live now. Next up, I would like to introduce our partners in this forum from EcoCycle and the East County Housing Opportunity Partners. First off, I'd like to introduce Zan Jones. She's the Executive Director of EcoCycle. Hi, Zan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here tonight. We are thrilled to be co-sponsoring this forum with ECHO and SRL, and want to thank everybody, all the candidates, for your hard work and your willingness to engage in public service. I know as a former elected that's a big job. And just in case anybody doesn't know who EcoCycle is, we are one of the largest and oldest nonprofit recyclers in the country. And we've been around for 45 years. Our mission is to innovate solutions, implement them, and then advocate for them in service of a more equitable, sustainable, and climate resilient future. And so we do that by engaging in all aspects of zero waste. So we process all of your single stream recycling at the Boulder County Recycling Center, and we process your hard to recycle materials that you drop off at the Longmont drop-off. And we teach environmental ed in St. Vrain Valley School District in Boulder Valley as well. And we work with Longmont and other cities and the state legislature to promote program and policy. So that's what we do. We do it together with all of you. One of our big motivators is sustainability and climate resiliency. Hope that's one of yours as well. And we'll note that zero waste solutions like recycling, composting, and waste reduction are one of the fastest and easiest ways, cost-effective ways that a community can reduce its climate footprint. So we've made a lot of progress together. We've got some work still to do. So love to work with all of you after the elections and hear what you have to say tonight. So thank you so much. Oops, you're on mute.
Thanks, Zan. And we are excited to work with EcoCycle. We're also excited to be working with the East County Housing Opportunity Partners. And I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie Jensen. She is here to say a few words about ECHO. Anne-Marie.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the candidates for your willingness to run for office and serve and to be here tonight. And we really appreciate it. And then I want to thank all the participants, the people who are watching, because democracy is not a spectator sport. And it's really important to be well informed. And I thank you for taking the time out of your evening to do that. The East County Housing Opportunity Coalition is a grassroots independent coalition to educate, inform, and train East Boulder County residents about affordable housing and how to be an effective advocate. And you might wonder, what does that have to do with sustainability? Well, we work with local governments and state representatives to create policies to ensure our communities create affordable housing for a diversity of people. More than 50% of our employees commute from elsewhere. And we have a history of housing policies that have created exclusive communities that are greenhouse gas and energy intensive. The housing and development sector is an important part of creating a sustainable city, and we want to be a part of the solution to how we develop, and we develop in a way that is both diverse and sustainable. So we're happy to be here tonight.
Did it again, unmuted. Anne-Marie, we're so happy you're here tonight as well. I'm also so happy that our candidates could join us, and our moderator, Liz Lane, is here to make sure things go well. Liz Lane has been a news producer, anchor, and program host on KGNU Community Radio for almost 30 years. Her day job is an estate planning attorney in Louisville. Sorry, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I still struggle with that one. I hope you all have your running shoes on, because she's going to keep it moving pretty quick. Liz?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for that, Ryan. And I'm enforcing the rules, but I did not make them. So let me get that out there at the front. Thanks to everyone. It's so nice to see all of the candidates and all the partners. And thanks so much to the board of directors and volunteers of Sustainable Resilient Longmont for all your effort in putting this opportunity together for voters to hear directly from their candidates. So it's a pleasure to be here. Audience, thank you so much for tuning in tonight and registering. I think there were at least close to 100 as of yesterday. So welcome to all of you, and thanks so much for taking the time to participate in this. We want to hear from you, and we look forward to getting questions from you, which you can write in your chat box, and we will try to get to as many of those as possible at the end of our Q&A that we've already prepared for the candidates. So do send those questions along in the chat, and they'll be edited for clarity and brevity, and we'll get to as many as we can. And thanks so much. We look forward to those. Quick review of the ground rules, which all of the candidates received notice of earlier. We did ask that everybody have a neutral background, no campaign banners, slogans, or other political paraphernalia. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement, and at the end there will be a closing question in lieu of a closing statement. Every candidate will be asked every question and have a single minute to respond. So the time frame is going to be really tight here tonight, and we've arranged offline here earlier an electronic coin toss by which we picked which of the mayoral candidates and which of the city council candidates will begin first, and we'll rotate first responses alternating order after that. And I'll do my very, very best to keep track of that, especially when we get to the city council. But speaking of the time limits, which we will observe very strictly tonight, I want to introduce our timekeeper. She is going to have a big job tonight, and Naomi Kurland is vice chair of the board of Sustainable Resilient Longmont. She chairs the Zero Waste Committee, and she's also the executive director of Longmont Food Rescue. Naomi will have 2 cards. A yellow card will indicate 15 seconds left to go, And when the red card pops up, it means that time is up, and please stop talking at that time. And finally, we've asked the candidates to focus the very short amount of time that they have on their own views and sharing their positions on the topics that we ask, and refraining from any cross-talking or addressing each other. So with that all in place, and I assume everybody's clear on that, and I hope all the folks that want to listen in Spanish have clicked on that lower right interpretation button where you can tune into that. And I guess if we're ready to go, Naomi, I'm going to ask, we'll begin with the mayoral candidates, and we will go through their opening statements and the questions that we have available for them, and the closing question, and then we will move on to the city council candidates independently. So with that, Greg Harris, running for mayor of Longmont, would you please kick us off here with your 2-minute opening statement, and then we'll go to Joan Peck, followed by Tim Waters, and we'll then go on to the questions. So welcome, Greg Harris.
Good evening, and thank you, Liz. For over a decade, the American business community has been a leading voice for the sustainability business case, demonstrating that environmental sustainability and economic growth in the U.S. can be achieved together. U.S. businesses are making a positive impact on sustainable outcomes, which can be seen through major trends such as driving efficiency, reuse and recycling, growing sustainable investment, reducing carbon emissions, and advancing renewable energy. In recent years, the boom in the U.S. natural gas production has been a primary driver of emission reductions. Recent abundance has given rise to additional research and development in technologies using natural gas for transportation, renewable generation, and industrial applications, emission reductions throughout the economy. Oil and gas provide the energy demands to 100,000 residents of Longmont and provide $34 billion in revenue and 150,000 jobs to Colorado. It is the only source that can provide our energy demands. Colorado air quality year after year has been improving. Saying no to oil and gas doesn't make sense. I will increase energy costs, and it will increase energy costs and unemployment significantly. The path to sustainable carbon neutral future is not through denying our reality with carbon taxes, but instead focuses on evolution of energy sources in an organized energy waste that will bring meaningful solutions to our environmental concerns. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that opening statement. And now we will go next to Joan Peck, who is running also for mayor of Longmont. Joan, 2-minute opening statement, please.
Thank you. I would like to thank SRL, ECHO, and EcoCycle for hosting this tonight. And I'm running for mayor for several reasons. First of all, it is about climate change for me. Since 2012, I led the petition drive to ban fracking within Longmont. And right now on DRCOG, I'm part of the CDOT rulemaking, looking at that to meet the state's greenhouse gas goals. It is not perfect. It's going to have to be tweaked quite a bit. The other reason that I really want to be mayor is that not only for the sustainability, but for the 7 years I've been working with RTD on completing our Fast Tracks rail to Longmont. Now that we have a partnership with Amtrak, RTD, BNSF, and Front Range Passenger Rail, there is the probability through the Build Back Better Act to get $12 billion into our area to finish that promise that RTD made. I think on the sustainability side in our land development code, we need to do a lot more to bring electricity into our developments and get off of natural gas. And to offer incentives for other renewable type of building codes. I also brought the air quality monitoring to Longmont to monitor our air around Union Reservoir and Vance Brand Airport to see where our VOCs are coming from. This data is extremely important so that we have an actual factual basis for making complaints to COGCC, the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, and to CDPHE, so that we can have some regulation on our air quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan Peck. And then finally, opening statement, mayoral candidate Tim Waters, running for mayor of Longmont. Good evening.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks to SRL, to EcoCycle, and to Echo for hosting this event, sponsoring the event. Liz, thanks to you for giving up your time as the moderator tonight. And Ryan, congratulations on your employment and welcome to Longmont. I'm Tim Waters. I serve on city council now. I represent Longmont's east side, the Ward 1, and I've represented the council since 2018. There are three big reasons for me for running for city council. The first is unfinished business that this council has with goals aligned with two vision statements that we adopted, we crafted in 2018, adopted in that fall. Those goals include becoming the kind of community where children are most fortunate to be born, where people have access to food and shelter, and where everyone feels they belong, and that our main street from Pike Road to Highway 66 and the river corridor from the sugar mill to the fairgrounds will be developed as a vibrant economic, residential, cultural, and entertainment epicenter while protecting our natural resources. So that's work that we've started, a lot more work to do. Number two, if there was ever a time when municipalities need strong leadership in their elected officials, it's now, as we anticipate coming out of this pandemic and in the post-pandemic future. I think I bring the kind of experience and leadership Longmont's going to need. And number three, we need a community-wide conversation on the kind of city we want to become as Longmont continues evolving. The emerging narrative around growth, how much, how fast, how smart, and how inclusive reflects very different visions of Longmont's future. And if we're going to remain a welcoming, healthy, vibrant community well into the 21st century, we need to craft a vision that we can share and understand what's going to be required of us to be the kind of community that meets our aspirations.
Thank you,
So,
Tim. That's it.
all right, thanks.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, Naomi. Okay, well, with that opening statement from each candidate out of the way, we're going to move into 6 questions. Each of you will be asked the same question and have 1 minute to respond. Greg, you won the electronic coin toss that we did off camera earlier today. So you will be the first responder to this question. And I'll just give Shiquita a heads up that she won the electronic coin toss for the city council candidate. So you will begin, you'll get the first question. So anyway, here it is. And all 3 of you will get it. As mayor, you will sit as Longmont's representative on the Platte River Power Authority Board. According to the board's 2020 Integrated Resource Plan, Platte River intends to supplement its renewable energy portfolio with upgraded natural gas or RICE units, which critics argue will have Longmont using fracked gas for the next 30 to 40 years. As mayor, how will you advocate on the Platte River Power Authority Board for Longmont's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030? And you have 1 minute, Greg Harris.
Well, I support 100% use of natural gas, and I always have. I think that, you know, if that's what your question is, then I'm all for
No,
it.
that's not the question. I'll just state it, that how will you advocate on the Platte River Power Authority Board as Longmont's representative on that board to help the city of Longmont meet its goal of 100% renewable energy use by 2030?
Renewable. Let's see. Well, businesses in the United States are embracing sustainability through innovation and drive at new efficiencies, recover valuable resources, eliminate costs, and achieve environmental outcomes. From reducing resource consumption to managing waste and embracing a circular economy, United States businesses are setting aggressive goals to optimize resource usage and efficiency, make supply chains greener, reuse and recycle materials, and reduce the environmental impact of their operations. Corporations are dedicating financial capital to expand critical investments that deliver environmentally sustainable outcomes. Businesses are underwriting, issuing, and investing in growing U.S. green
That's
bond
time.
market.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then same question to you, Joan Peck, and the background of the question again is the Platte River Power Authority Board, according to its
Started that timer immediately.
plan, intends to use upgraded natural gas or RICE units to supplement its renewable energy portfolio. As mayor and as Longmont's representative on that board, how will you advocate on the board for Longmont's goal of 100% renewable energy use by 2030? 1 minute.
I do not like the idea of building a RICE facility at all or using natural gas, because I do believe it'll get us paired with them for 20 or 30 years. With them, I mean the oil and gas industry. I do think that PRPA needs to work with us, the 4 individual cities, to be able to wean ourselves off very soon from natural gas and go to renewable energy, either by helping us build neighborhood solar plants and or solar fields. Also helping us get development to use more energy, to get us off more renewable energy. We can do that with buying more energy from other places that are using wind energy. We can, there are just so many ways, but I do think that they need to look faster and closer.
Okay, thank you, Joan. And then finally to you, Tim Waters, the same question. Given the Platte River Power Authority Board's indication of its intention to supplement its portfolio, renewable portfolio, with upgraded natural gas or RICE units, how will you advocate on the board for Longmont's goal of 100% renewables by 2030?
The 2020 update of the portfolio was controversial. We all know that, because of the mix that was presented in the 4 options that were presented. That on the watch of the next mayor, that portfolio is going to be updated again. And as the mayor, I will push hard to assure that there are no fossil fuels as part of that portfolio. I think the key to getting there, in addition to the technologies that are emerging, is at a corporate level to make certain that all the incentives that get the attention of the decision makers in Platte River Power Authority are aligned with that goal, with our goal, and with what the next portfolio needs to look like. So I know there's a lot of narrative, a lot of noise around the cost of storage and where the technology is, but that's going to be probably the single biggest issue for the mayor as a member of the PRP board in this next 2 years.
Okay, thanks. And this is the first of tonight's yes or no questions. Will you specifically oppose Platte River's proposed RICE use if elected mayor? Yes or no? Greg, to you first. You're on mute.
That's a no, Liz.
Okay. Joan
Yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
Okay, great. So question number 2 goes to Ms. Peck first. Currently, Longmont is diverting 37% of residential waste from landfills, but when commercial waste is factored in, Longmont is actually only diverting 24% of all trash generated. That means that the city is still sending 76% of its trash to landfills, 80% of which is estimated to be recoverable. The city of Boulder has an ordinance requiring all businesses operating in the city limits to recycle. Would you support a similar policy in Longmont? Why or why not? 1 minute, first to you, Joan, then to Tim, and then to Greg.
Thank you, Liz. Actually, we did address this issue at a meeting. I guess it was about a month ago. It is a problem because our commercial landfill, our trash collectors are not the city. The city of Longmont does not pick up commercial trash. Those are privatized, Western Disposal, etc. So if we mandate that they pick up recycling, then there will be a huge increase probably in cost. But we are addressing this at the moment through our land use and our trash pickup through Charlie Camanitas. So keep watch. We are concerned about it, and we are going to address it this year.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. And using a few less seconds than you had. Tim Waters, the same question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, repeat it just so I get the fine points of the
Okay,
question.
sure. So Longmont is currently converting, when you factor in residential and commercial waste, only 24% of the total trash that's generated in the city. That means essentially that Longmont is still sending 76% of its trash to landfills, 80% of which is estimated to be recoverable. The city of Boulder has enacted an ordinance which requires all businesses operating in the city limits to recycle. Would you support a similar policy in Longmont? Why or why not? 1 minute.
Yeah, thanks. We need to continue to push solid waste diversion, recycling being 1/3 of that equation. As Joan mentioned, we're preempted by the state to do some of the things that we'd like to do to meet our goal of 100% of our recyclables being recycled. For me, I do think that part of the pace of moving in the direction of more of a mandate is going to largely be in the context of other fees that we're increasing, because you're not going to do that without increasing fees on the users, whether it's residential or commercial. So I get the fact that we could pass an ordinance and mandate that today. But I think if we do that, we're going to have to do it and understand we're in the context that we're in the process of raising rates on a number of utilities right now. And the cost of living is crushing some folks in Longmont. And that's just going to have to be part of the balance. But as a priority, yes, we need to move everything we can in terms of solid waste diversion into composting and recycling.
Thanks for that answer. And then finally, Greg Harris, that question to you. Would you support an ordinance in the city of Longmont similar to that Boulder has, which requires all businesses operating in the city limits to recycle?
Thank you, Liz. I'd like to say we're not Boulder, we're Longmont. And I want to state that very clearly. I don't support mandatory recycling. I recycle as many people in Longmont do. But, we need to stop the government overreach. And so, I don't think that putting an extra bill on top of our recycling or waste removal is something that we should address. But this is always something that we can ask the people of Longmont, before deciding in the city council to put an automatic fee on them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then another yes or no question on this topic. Yes or no, would you support a universal recycling ordinance for Longmont that includes universal composting? Yes or no? And Joan, first to you.
That depends, Liz, completely upon if we are going to have a composting facility and a recycling facility. I do think having our own recycling facility would be amazing, but I don't know how we can have a universal recycling or composting if we don't have a place to take those products. So yes, but there's got to be a lot more planning, a lot more thought that goes into it. It depends upon the plan.
Okay, thanks very much. Actually, that should have been yes or no. So sorry about that. Giving Joan more.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. And Tim, yes or no? Would you support a universal recycling ordinance that includes universal composting?
I wish you were a yes or no question. You've asked it a yes or no question, I get.
Yeah.
But if we had a market for the
Okay, I mean, even though I messed up with Joan, I feel it's unfair to keep it going because SRL and the partners were interested in a yes or no answer. So my bad on that with Joan.
Well, so I'll give you a qualified yes. There's a whole bunch of variables.
Okay, and then how about to you, Greg? Yes or no on that?
I'll keep it simple. No, Liz. No on that.
Okay. Question 3 deals with sustainable housing. And Tim, you are first now to answer. What role does single family residential development play in greenhouse gas emissions? vehicle miles traveled, also known as VMT, and air pollution? Is there a smarter way to develop? And if so, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, well, the single family housing is a huge contributor to our footprint in greenhouse emissions. So we would more density along our business corridors with access to public transportation. It's pretty straightforward to build homes in proximity to where people work and in proximity to where people play. So those are like 15-minute neighborhoods, right? Where you're never 15 minutes from where you need to live your life or spend that part of your life when you're not working. It's pretty straightforward, and there is work we have to do as a city with our zoning and with our land code and our building codes to get us where we need to be in terms of more density along the urban corridor and public transportation.
Okay, thanks very much for that answer. And Greg, what role does single family residential development play in greenhouse gas emissions, vehicle miles traveled, and air pollution? Is there a smarter way to develop? And if so, what does that look like to you? 1 minute, please.
Yeah, the most important issue in the mayor's race is attainable housing. The inclusionary ordinance makes provisions for low-income housing, but that's not the biggest problem that faces Longmont. Businesses need the availability of workforce middle-class housing. Today, a coalition was announced to promote and encourage the development of attainable housing. I support all the goals of Prosper Longmont. Check it out on the web and see how you can be involved in bringing attainable housing to Longmont. Developers have testified before the city council that Longmont about the difficulty in getting projects through the approval process. As mayor of Longmont, I will require quarterly reports on the status of proposed attainable housing projects. The public needs to know why these projects are not being completed. Recently, the city council said they wanted annual reports. That's not enough. The need is now. Developers and the public need actions, not words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. And Joan Peck, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please, Liz.
Okay. In your view, what role does single-family residential development play in greenhouse gas emissions, vehicle miles traveled, and air pollution? Is there a smarter way to develop? And if so, what does that look like to you? 1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, there is a smarter way to develop, and it is urbanization with more townhouses, condominiums, apartment buildings, et cetera. But our inclusionary housing ordinance allows for every type of building that a developer wants to do, as long as they follow the inclusionary zoning ordinance. There is a change also in the landscape with the pandemic, in that there are a lot of people that are going to continue to telecommute. And because of that, they may not want to live where they work, which is why I'm working both on State Highway 119 with BRT, as well as the rail, which would, if it's done correctly, have electric engines. I think that, and I mentioned this before, that our land development codes, our zoning, et cetera, always need to be tweaked so that we move faster, cleaner, and more efficiently through our land development.
Okay, very good. Thanks so much for that. The next question addresses transportation and sustainability. With transportation making up approximately 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions, alternatives to gas vehicles are essential for a sustainable future. What steps do you believe Longmont should take to reduce vehicle carbon emissions? What ideas do you have for reducing single occupancy vehicle use for trips of 3 miles or less? And Joan, that goes to you first.
Thank you. So I am on a connectivity group through the Longmont Economical Development Partnership, and we are looking at trying to get the businesses involved with the leadership to get some kind of public transportation locally to get people out of their cars, be it a shuttle, be it rideshare, be it via, whatever it is. But those discussions are going on now. As far as regional, once again, it's State Highway 119 and the train. However, the conversation about EVs and greenhouse gases to me is a little frustrating, even though I think EVs are great for getting rid of the individual cars, but we have to lay a lot of cement on the roads. We're continually doing that with cement producing a huge amount of methane. So it isn't just about oil and gas. It is not just about getting EVs. It's how we look at the entire picture and bring it all together.
Thank you very much, Joan Peck, for that answer. Greg Harris, to you now. Question about vehicle carbon emissions. I'll repeat the question. Transportation makes up approximately 1/3 of total greenhouse gas emissions, and alternatives to gas vehicles seem essential for a sustainable future. What steps, in your view, should Longmont take to reduce vehicle carbon emissions? And what ideas do you have for reducing single occupancy vehicle use for trips under 3 miles?
Great question. For openers, I don't think the state should adopt the proposals of the Colorado Department of Transportation. That would shift the attention from driving cars to public transit. Fixing highways is a problem that needs to be addressed now. The city of Longmont is the lead agency on the project to improve Highway 66. As mayor, I'll make sure that one of the first items on the agenda is approval of the funding of the project to improve Highway 66. The Colorado Department of Transportation did a planning and environmental linkages PEL study. Now it's time to move past the study and do something. The most effective way Colorado can reduce global GHG emissions is to support the exploration of clean Rockies gas. The Western United States and Tribal Nations Report Executive Summary describes the opportunity and the scale of it compared to the attacking of the 0.225 amount of global GHG emissions that originate in Colorado. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Greg Harris. And then finally, Tim Waters, what steps do you think Longmont should take to reduce vehicle carbon emissions? What ideas do you have for reducing single occupancy vehicle use for short trips of 3 miles or less?
For whatever it's worth, our council adopted recently the roadmap to the future plan. It's a kind of a cobbling together of a half a dozen studies or so since 2012. But reducing, one of the priorities is reducing single passenger rides and reducing the number of rides of distances 3 miles or less. So that's a step in the right direction. Beyond that, we have a lot of work to do in terms of the kinds of infrastructure that's going to be required for electrifying or charging our electrified fleets. The city of Longmont is committed in our plan to replacing fossil fuel powered vehicles with electric vehicles. Proposals, as far as I'm concerned, proposals for new residential, commercial development as mixed use. We should require adequate numbers of charging stations in those developments. And lastly, we're committed. We are funded on my recommendation, funded in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks very much. Okay, next question, dealing with also air quality, and in particular the data that has been made available from local air monitoring stations that reveal poor air quality days in conjunction with fracking activity days nearby. What steps would you ask staff to take to address the poor air quality that's being identified through the Longmont air monitoring? And that goes to Tim Waters first.
Yeah, first of all, I think we do need a better system for pushing that information. We've got a website that's available, but we need a better system for pushing information out when air quality it creates risks for people with respiratory problems. So we need to be proactive on that front. I think we have underutilized the human resource in terms of the reports that we get. Dr. Helmut and the time he spends with us, I think we ought to make him more available to residents in terms of question and answer opportunities and taking advantage of the expertise that he brings. I have asked our legal staff whether or not we have legal options. Do we have any authority outside of our city limits to enforce anything that would reduce risks of contaminating air quality with the work that's being done outside our city limits? And the answer that I've received is we don't have legal options to impose on them.
Thank you very much, Tim Waters. And then Joan Peck, same question to you. Given that data from local air monitoring stations has revealed poor air quality days when there is fracking activity nearby, what steps would you ask staff to take to address poor air quality identified through the local monitoring?
Thank you. I already have asked staff for some alerts on our phone or through email, through texts. And at this point in time, there's no levity, I guess, from staff to be able to see this through. So if I'm mayor, that will change. Also, we have had before pandemic 3 or 4 public meetings with, not meetings, venues for the public to attend to hear Dr. Helmig's data and his expertise. What we do need to be able to do is to get with Boulder County. It isn't just one city that can do this. We have to have a whole conglomeration, I guess, of partnerships with the other cities in Boulder County to push this data forward, to really move some action on the state level to do more about our air quality.
Thank you, Joan. And finally, Greg Harris, to you. What steps would you ask Longmont City staff to take to address the poor air quality that's been identified through monitoring and in particular when there's fracking activity nearby?
Well, Longmont's not a bubble, so we're within the range of everyone else's city as well. But we need better data before we make any rules. We don't want or need any more government overreach. Fracking, I thought the fracking resolution went too far in 2012. It's one thing not to want fracking in residential zoned areas, but this effectively banned all fracking in the city of Longmont, which I do not think is a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the final question here for mayoral candidates, and it is related to the last question and to something that Ms. Peck mentioned. We're talking about climate change here and some background. This past August, Boulder County issued a report that the county had broken a record for unhealthy air days with 53 ozone alerts so far in 2021. The entire region set several records for heat waves last summer, seeing 3 100-degree days back to back in June, and several other of our neighboring cities recorded their hottest summer ever recorded in 2021. Between drought, heat, and poor air quality, Colorado seems to be experiencing the oncoming of climate change. As mayor, how would you prioritize the climate crisis in your work with our regional partners at the state and local level? And that goes to Greg first. You're on mute, Greg.
Thank you. The carbon tax is part of the discussions on the Green New Deal, a bad idea made worse by a carbon tax. What's wrong with the carbon tax like the one enacted in Boulder, Colorado? Government talk about we need to fix the climate problem, but they're really excited about the revenue they can get for their pet projects like the Green New Deal and a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill. Oil and gas provide the energy's demands of 100,000 residents of Longmont and provide 34 billion in revenue, 150,000 jobs to Colorado. It's the only source that can provide our energy demands. Colorado air quality year after year is improving. Saying no to oil and gas makes a nonsensical argument. Will increase the energy cost and unemployment significant. We need to cultivate the STEM system community in Colorado and look to more realistic paths for alternative energy solutions through technological rangings and superconductivity, fuel cells, fuel separators, lithium, polymer, and energy storage, to name a few. Climate change. Boulder, Colorado, new record. Bad weather in 1 year should
Thanks,
not
Greg.
be changed.
That's a minute on that.
Yeah, I tried to get in. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. And then next to you, Tim Waters. Again, I probably don't need to repeat the background.
No.
We did have 53 ozone alert days in 2021, hottest summer ever recorded for many cities along the Front Range. As mayor, how would you prioritize the climate crisis in your work with our regional partners at the state and local level?
Yeah, to some degree, how I would prioritize all climate related proposals are on my website. My policy positions are organized under two themes. One is recovery from the pandemic. The other is reducing our carbon footprint. And solid waste diversion, stay in the course, pushing PRPA, disciplined implementation of our 27 climate action recommendations, task force recommendations, are all part of that, as well as what we've already talked about as a public transportation option, probably a public-private partnership and a subscription service in Longmont. What I didn't get to mention in an earlier response was we will in 2022, we are budgeted to bring the community together to envision the future of the local transportation and what that's going to mean to us in terms of ride hailing and subscription services, the elimination of impervious asphalt, et cetera.
Thank you, Tim. And then finally, Joan Peck, to you. As mayor, how would you prioritize the climate crisis in your work with our regional partners at the state and local level to address drought, heat, and poor air quality?
So I would continue to do what we have proposed in our, with our staff and with the ordinances that we are proposing and our move forward with traffic, et cetera, with our traffic plan. But I do think it takes a larger, in order to actually get the goal that we want, it takes a larger commitment, and it has to be done on a regional basis and on a state basis. DRCOG is doing a lot to incentivize green building, to incentivize reducing greenhouse gases, et cetera. I would continue to work with them, but also to work with our partners in the East. Weld County also has to become part of this solution, and they are part of our region, even though they're not part of our county. So we need to partner with everybody in the area so that we can come up with a plan that will actually work for everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for that. And that actually wraps up the Sustainable Resilient Longmont set of questions for the mayoral candidates. We do have, in lieu of a closing statement for each of the candidates this evening, but currently now addressing the mayoral candidates, we just have a final question for all of you. And we want to give it's really a one sentence answer. We don't have a time frame. So super hard to address so many of these issues in the minute that you guys have been given. And you really all did a fantastic job addressing these questions that are, have significant problems and a lot of different moving parts. So very good on all that. But if each of you, and Greg, you began with the opening statement. So we're going to have you wrap up. But Tim Waters first, Joan Peck second, and then Greg third. The question is this: in one sentence, please tell us, if elected, what is your number one priority when it comes to the sustainability of our community? And we're going to ask that same question to the city council candidates as well when we get to them. But Tim, you are first on that.
I'm thinking the one sentence. In one sentence, is reducing our carbon footprint with all that we've talked about a sufficient statement? That is the priority, right? Every election. You said one sentence. They're all going to be climate elections. This one for certain.
Okay, thanks so much. And Joan Peck, in one sentence, what is your number one priority when it comes to the sustainability of our community?
Reducing our carbon footprint and cleaning up our air. And we do that through everything that we're doing, whether it is development, traffic, options on traffic, and having walkable, bikeable neighborhoods so that people can actually be close to where they live, be close to the amenities of where they live.
Thank you for that. And then finally, Gregory Harris, in one sentence, if elected, what is your #1 priority when it comes to the sustainability of our community?
If my opponents want sustainability, I want responsible growth, defined as growth that uses inert natural resources and creates productive human flourishing energy.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all 3 of the mayoral candidates so much for your thoughtful responses. And I don't see at this time that we have any questions from the audience. So unless I hear otherwise from Ryan, I am going to move next to the city council candidates running for city council in the city of Longmont this fall. And we have 6 of them this evening. We have 5 at-large candidates, and they are Diane Crist, Jeremy Dejuan Johnson, Aren Rodriguez, Tallis Salamatian, and Shakir Yarbrough. And then Marcia Martin is the Ward 2 candidate. So welcome to all of you this evening. And thanks for your attention to the other candidates. So we're going to have a similar approach here. As you will recall, we have each of you will have 2-minute opening statements. And Shiquita Yarbrough, you're going to go first on that. And then, or excuse me, Shiquita, you will answer the first question first. I'm simply going to go in alphabetical order as I did for the mayoral candidates for your opening statement, if that's all right. And you'll each have 2 minutes for that. And then we'll go into the questions and 1-minute responses for each of those. And then that final question for all of you. So if that's clear, remember the yellow, we have Naomi here standing by in the upper left-hand corner with the yellow sheet, and then the red, that's 15 seconds left. And then the red sheet is time up. And thanks so much again, the mayoral candidates were just awesome abiding by that, difficult though it was. So with that, welcome to all of the city council candidates. And let's begin with your 2-minute opening statement. And we'll begin with Diane Crist and go alphabetically. Diane, Jeremy, Aren, Tallis, Diane, Jeremy, Marcia, Aren, Tallis, and Shiquita. So welcome, and off you go, Diane.
Thank you, Liz. And thanks for having us, SRL, EcoCycle, and Echo. I'm EcoCycle and Echo. This is an important forum. My name is Diane Crist. I've lived in Longmont for 32 years, and we've raised our 4 children here. I'm a business growth professional, and I've worked with a lot of large projects. And I am running for city council because I want the city of Longmont to get on board with the Hyperloop. The Hyperloop is a high-speed magnetic passenger pod transportation system. It reduces highway emissions by 1/3, and that hasn't really included what they're expecting for pass-through traffic and the change in local traffic after the Hyperloop is implemented. It's a way to have our cars in clean air too, and it'll be instrumental in reducing our greenhouse gases. It's a game changer. And the Hyperloop is going to change how we formulate our city, and people will be able to live where they can afford and work where they're needed very easily with a 9-minute transportation time from Fort Collins to Denver. And there will also be a leg out from Denver out to Vail. I also believe the Hyperloop will change many housing and transportation issues facing the city. It's a 5th mode of transportation. It will not replace the local traffic or local transportation solutions that the mayors are working on. And in fact, I think it will drive those situations and solutions. Okay. Best business practices will be important for the city going forward with the change in planning that will be needed. I think the city should collect money before we spend it, and consider where our resources really are and proper use of our assets. And I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diane, for that. Jeremy Dejuan Johnson, welcome. And your 2-minute opening statement to.
First off, thanks to everyone that's hosting this. Thanks for spending the time with us. I am Jeremy Johnson, been in Longmont for almost 10 years, originally from Andalusia, Alabama. I am a decorated disabled veteran in the United States Army. Reason I am seeking the vote of the public for city council at large is because I want to be the voice for the citizens. I don't want to just make decisions. I want to hear them, educate them, and break them be the decision-making part of the city. Supporting small businesses, letting small businesses know that they're not just wanted, they're actually needed in the community for us to thrive. Supporting our youth with different opportunities, from extending the education portfolio or even satellite learning centers that's partner with the Front Range Community College and the local, CU, CSU, and all of those other colleges around our neighborhood. And then looking at the public service, giving the law enforcement, firefighters, EMT, and all of those people the support that they need to continue to protect our homes and where we invest at, and that's the city of Longmont. And also, when it comes back to our youth, looking at ways to make them more sustainable in their environment, looking at different ways to keep them engaged. Longmont would, the citizens would enjoy ice skating rink, a hockey rink. I mean, it's a great revenue generating source for here in Longmont. When it comes to sustainability in the energy sector, yes, oil and gas, I worked in that industry for years. It has served its purpose. We will continue to use it, but it is time to start thinking smartly on how we use it and how we can start being, a smarter climate environment. And I just ask that the citizens of Longmont please support me, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy Johnson. And next, Marcia Martin, who is running in the Ward 2 district. Good evening, welcome. There you go.
Sorry, my space bar doesn't work just when I want it to. Hi, everybody. I am Marcia Martin. I've been on the city council for 4 years and will be on the city council for another 4 years. I want to thank Sustainable Resilient Longmont, ECHO, and EcoCycle for having, by hands down, the most interesting forum of all of the ones, and with the best opportunities to answer the hard questions. So I really appreciate having this opportunity to talk. We have 3 concurrent crises, and I just want to give kudos to the city of Longmont for its incredibly efficient and effective pandemic response. We didn't make the policy there because we don't have a board of health, but we have carried out the national, state, and county policies and taken on a great part of the burden for other cities in Boulder County. So I just want to shout that out. Our other 2 crises are housing and homelessness and the climate crisis. And they are related because if we don't solve homelessness and get everybody under a sound roof, then the impact of the early vagaries of the climate, which are upon us now, and nobody should say anything else, are going to harm those people who are not well housed. So our most critical problem to solve is climate change, but our most urgent problem to solve is housing. And I am going to spend as much of my time as possible working out a co-solution, a sustainable city solution that handles both of those problems. And I am going to stick it to PRPA.
Thank you, Marcia. And Aren Rodriguez, welcome, and your 2-minute opening statement, please.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me at this time. I am a native of Longmont. I was born and raised here. But I'll just move on in the sense that my platform will probably be talked about a lot in the concept that housing and responsible growth is one of the number 1A priorities, and you'll hear this from all the other candidates, I'm sure, in one way or another. And so I'm not going to go on too much about it because I'll get the opportunity to speak on it, I'm sure. One thing that I think that most candidates will not talk about so much is, although Councilmember Martin just did touch on it, is infrastructure. And I think that we need to have an honest conversation about what it costs to have great facilities, great infrastructure, and great services in a city like Longmont, because Longmont is amazing and people need to know that. Economics environment, though, is also very important because we need to balance both the beautiful natural resources that we have, as well as the fact that we need to have good, strong infrastructure, economic infrastructure, in the sense that we need to be able to attract great businesses here in the city of Longmont. As well, I would like to talk about community a little bit, in the sense that Longmont was, more of an agrarian community. It was more of a agricultural community at one point. And so we all need to understand that we go to the same restaurants, the same grocery stores, the same gas stations, and we all need to understand each other regardless of whether. Thank you.
Thank you, Aren Rodriguez. And Tallis Salamatian, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. And thank you, Ryan, SRL, ECHO, and EcoCycle. I really appreciate you guys putting this all together. It's very important for voters to have this education. So you guys are a very important part of democracy. So thank you all for all the efforts you guys have put toward this event and to this election in general. So I commend you all. I'm Tallis Salamatian, and I'm running for Longmont City Council to be an advocate for small and growing businesses. I started my first business in 2004, and basically I've been in business and entrepreneurship since then. I earned an MBA. I taught the capstone to the business minor at CU Boulder Elite School of Business. I wrote a book on business called The Savvy Entrepreneur's Business Handbook. Since COVID, I've been volunteering to help businesses recover through Energize Colorado's Digital Innovations Initiative. The top 3 things that I want to do when I'm elected to City Council is supporting local businesses struggling from COVID, helping people into home ownership and not trapping them in subsidized affordable rentals, education and reskilling programs, particularly for future green jobs. In order to achieve these things, we need to increase our housing stock. Coming from entrepreneurship, I'm all about innovative solutions. I have a good friend who is a COO of a hemp company. She was educating me on the benefits of using hemp in construction. Hemp grows very quickly and is also a phytoremediator, which means that it pulls out toxins and pollutants out of the environment. When I'm elected, I will amend building codes to use a wider range of building materials, including hemp. I think that we should experiment with 3D printing homes with hemp-based concretes. And additionally, we should incentivize builders to use hemp-based plywoods. If we're serious about sustainability, we need to show it by piloting more projects and incentivizing innovation. Vote for me, Tallis. You can find out more about me at my website, tallis.co, spelled TALLIS.co, like Colorado. Thank you, and I hope to earn your vote.
Okay, thank you so much. Tallis Salamatian, sorry for not getting that exactly right the first time.
Don't worry about it, I get it all the time. And just a question, Representative Aren mentioned Marcia directly. Are we allowed to do that?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. And then Shakir Yarbrough, running for at-large City Council in Longmont. Your 2-minute opening statement, please.
Thank you, Liz. I just want to say thank you, everyone, EcoCycle, SRL, ECHO, of course, Liz, Ryan, and Naomi. It's hard to be strict, right? When you want to hear the last part of that conversation or that answer, right? So hello, everyone. My name is Shakir Yarbrough. I have lived here in Colorado in Longmont for almost 10 years. Crazy to believe that, but it is. And I am running for city council at large, as you see, to make a positive impact on my community. I am passionate about climate change and protecting our environment and ensuring that all of us, all that is done equitably. It's so important. There's a lot that I still have to learn in this area. I am so blessed to have a daughter who is studying environmental science and willing to teach me. Not only my daughter, but so many other community members who are willing, that are passionate, who are willing to show me and teach me. And I know that I don't have all the answers. What I will promise, though, is that I will continue to learn and hear from our community about how to address these issues in a way that ensures that Longmont continues to be a leader in addressing climate change. We must do so in a way that doesn't further marginalize members of our community, but instead lifts them up through climate justice. So I just want to say thank you again, and let's get ready.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much to all the candidates for those opening statements. And we're now going to dive into the questions. And as I mentioned before, every candidate will have an opportunity to answer all of these 6 questions, and then that final 1-sentence question. And I will ask the 6 different questions, 6 different categories, some of them related, of course. And Shiquita won the coin toss, the electronic coin toss. So she will answer the first question. And I'll go in one order straight through again, alphabetically. And then Diane will get question 2 first, Jeremy question 3, Marcia question 4, etc. So 1 minute for each of these questions. And some, it's difficult, but we'll do our best here. So the first question addresses the topic of fracking. In 2012, Longmont voters approved a fracking ban by an overwhelming margin. The Colorado Supreme Court, however, subsequently overturned that initiative based on previous court preemption cases. Now that Colorado has SB 181 in place, allowing local control of oil and gas regulations, what steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to protect Longmont residents from the dangers of fracking? Shiquita, 1 minute on that topic.
Thank you, Liz. Since we do, since that bill was passed and we do have authority over fracking, it is it's so important that we make sure that we have full control, and we continue to have full control. The charter should be amended to make sure that we have full control. As well as we will continue to fight fracking with everything that we can within the city of Longmont. At least that's what I would do. And it's important because fracking studies have shown that it's bad for our health. The benzene in the air is not good for us. Drilling provide particular matter and chemicals, and the fracking fluids can bring nasty and horrible chemicals and can cause actual explosions. And so no one wants that in their community. I don't think anyone wants any explosions, any chemical explosions in their community. So I just would say that I would continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiquita, for that. And then Diane, Crist, that same question to you. What steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to protect Longmont residents from the dangers of fracking, understanding that SB 181 is in place, allowing local control of oil and gas regulations? You're on mute.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, so first I want to say, we dug for coal, we drilled for oil, and that was 100 years ago. It was a time when people were doing a tough job to gain energy and fuel to keep their families warm and to keep our society warm. And that was really a time period thing. I mean, I think we should appreciate how hard that work was and how important that work was for developing what we now have in our town. That being said, the rules around oil gathering were 100 years old, and it allowed fracking to occur very close to schools. And there was an accident. So given our current growth, it's good that we don't have fracking near where people are living and near schools. And so I actually supported the council removing fracking at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And the same question to you next, Jeremy Johnson. What steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to prevent its residents from the dangers of fracking?
I mean, a lot of people has mentioned, I mean, we have to be smart on where we grow. And also with the passing of that SB 181, it does give the control. But at the same time, we have to also get the input from the public. I mean, we all see the byproducts from the oil and gas industry. Not saying I support the fracking, but I mean, it is used in our environment. Being able to stop it around housing, schools, into the water sources is a very positive issue. And I would totally agree with the way it's going, but I feel like we need to continue to educate ourselves as the oil and gas industry does try to change to reduce their carbon footprint as well, just like the whole country is, to start looking at the innovative ways they are bringing out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy Johnson. And next, Marcia Martin, do you want me to repeat the question? Okay, you're
Yes,
on.
please.
Okay, good, sure. So in 2012, Longmont voters approved a fracking ban by an overwhelming margin. Later, the Colorado Supreme Court overturned that initiative based on court preemption. Now that Colorado has SB 181 in place, which allows local control of some oil and gas regulations, what steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to protect Longmont residents from the dangers of fracking?
Thank you. In 2018, before the passage of 181, Longmont achieved a no surface disturbance drilling agreement with the owners of the accessible mineral rights under the city of Longmont. So consequently, there are now, between 181 and that contract, there are no places in Longmont where a fracked well can be drilled. And in fact, as part of the agreement, all of the old wells in Longmont have now been plugged and abandoned and are being monitored by the city of Longmont for leaks. What we need to do is use the data we collect and find a way to hold the state of Colorado's feet to the fire, because they need to strengthen their rules on the extraction industry outside of Longmont, which is where the problem comes in.
Okay, thank you, Marcia Martin, for that response. Next, Aren Rodriguez. What steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to protect Longmont residents from the dangers of fracking?
Thank you very much. I was a strong proponent of the steps that we have in place here, as far as the lack of ability to make surface drilling available in the city of Longmont within its city limits. And at the end of the day, that's what we have, is the ability to talk about the city limits, right? We're not talking about underneath the city, because we don't have that ability to make that happen. And so I would hope that the state legislature continues to push towards what I would call lack of preemptions from the state level. I would like local ability to talk about these things, talk about not drilling underneath the city. But we don't have that option because of state preemptions. And so that's the next level. That's the next level. And I hope that anybody on city council will approve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Aren Rodriguez. And finally, this question regarding fracking goes to Tallis Salamatian. In 2012, Longmont voters approved a fracking ban by an overwhelming margin. Later, the Colorado Supreme Court overturned that based on state preemption. Now, with SB 181 in place, allowing local control of oil and gas regulations, what steps do you think the city of Longmont should take to protect Longmont residents from the dangers of fracking?
I really appreciate the question. Now, I grew up in Bakersfield, and I have a friend who owns a international fracking company, and I understand the value of natural gas as a transitionary fuel source. It's much better than coal and arguably better than gasoline and diesel as well. So I do see it as a transitionary fuel source. However, there are substantial environmental and personal harms that are caused by fracking within the city limits. So I am not a proponent of fracking within Longmont. I think that the voters were correct to ban fracking in our community. One example is the type of erosion that can occur from fracking. If you look at Collier and 9th, there was a sinkhole that popped up right there in the intersection. I think we should do everything we can to make sure that our city is kept pristine. There's plenty of other areas that if they want to do fracking there, they can.
Okay, thank you for that, Tallis Salamatian. Okay, the next question is going to all the candidates as well, and we'll begin with Diane. Crist, this question deals with zero waste and just some background facts that SRL wanted to lay out here. That landfilling organics results in the production of methane, which is 84 times worse than CO2 in causing global warming. In other words, when putting organic material into landfills, this creates methane, and separating that and composting organics and applying it to soil is an excellent tool for fighting climate change because it stores carbon. So with that background, Longmont does have an opt-in program to allow residents to compost curbside, but only 24% of Longmont residents participate. SRL's Zero Waste Committee and EcoCycle are recommending that the city of Longmont provide universal composting where, like recycling, every home gets a bin and shares the cost. Do you support universal composting similar to Longmont's recycling program? Yes or no? Why or why not? And first to you, Diane Crist.
Is it only a yes or no question, or can I add a few points?
You have a minute, so it is not yes or no, why or why not, and you have a minute.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Sure.
Actually, we have a micro farm or an expansive garden, and it depends on how much work we're doing on it, is, you know, how my husband describes it to others. And we compost. We've composted for years. And it is very helpful to the garden or micro farm, however you'd like to look at it. And so I would encourage composting probably to the nth degree. And I think the reason why people have not been composting in Longmont is because there's an additional cost to it. So I guess the answer, Liz, would be yes. If we could share the cost of that, I think more people would compost. And I also think once more people composted, they would avail themselves of the products of that, like they do the shredding that we do for Christmas trees and the mulching. So anyway, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. And same question to you, Jeremy Johnson. Do you support a universal composting program similar to the recycling program that Longmont currently offers residents to opt into?
Thanks. The biggest thing with this is if we force it, are we sure that people really understand what they're doing? So education is going to be the biggest thing here. We have to educate people. If we're going to force something or try to share the cost with somebody, if they don't really know what they're doing, we're going to generate more waste. So if that was a way that the public agreed to share that cost over the education and get all the educations to make that productive, I mean, if it's right for the people and it's right for the environment, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed, but at the same time, like I say, it has to be what the public wants to do, and they have to be educated correctly.
Okay, thank you very much. And Marcia Martin, I'll repeat the question. Again, with the background information that mixing organic material with other trash contributes greatly to the production of methane, which is a greenhouse gas that is 84 times worse than CO2 in causing global warming. Currently, Longmont has an opt-in program for residential curbside composting, but only 24% of Longmont residents are currently participating. Do you support a universal composting program similar to the recycling program that currently is in place in Longmont, where every home gets a bin and shares the cost? Yes or no, why or why not?
Yes, but we need to make sure that when we do this, that we are actually reducing the total carbon footprint of the operation. So that means that if we have to take the compost input materials a long way away in order to get them processed, we need to count that. And if we need to move them a long way away, the byproducts of it, in order for them to be used, we need to take that into account. Nevertheless, we also need to be aware of the methane production if the material goes to the landfill. So ultimately the answer is yes, but we need to do the math and institute it at the right time and with smaller bins. I'd also like to say that there's a combination now, an opt-in combination that's cheaper than not doing compost at all.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcia Martin. Aren Rodriguez, do you support a universal composting program similar to Longmont's current recycling program, where every home gets a bin and shares the cost? Yes or no, why or why not?
Thank you for the question. The answer is an opt-out. I would like people to have the ability to opt out of the program, but be immediately included in the program. And I think that based on the studies that have been brought before City Council already, some of which have been named by a fellow council member who is a candidate. I will not name names because apparently that's an issue, that we need an opt-out position. And also, as it's been said, I am supporting a more local concept for a place to take the said compost, not trucking it out to Keensburg, which is nearly 50 miles, I believe. So it's a 100-mile round trip. And as such, that is not doing us well. And as far as greenhouse gas, thank you.
Aren, thanks for that. And then finally, Tallis Salamatian, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. I appreciate it though.
Okay.
So I completely agree. I think that methane is a big problem, and not only does excess food waste within trash cause methane, but that methane increases the time it takes the other trash to decompose. So there's a twofer there that is really negative. My wife and I also compost. We have one of those big green bins, but it hardly ever gets filled. I think it'd be more efficient for a little smaller bin as an option, like similar to the trash bin has two different sizes. I could see it as a real revenue generator if it is done correctly, because we could then sell the compost for profit. I think education on separating to avoid contamination is critical, because if the separation isn't done properly and there's people who, either through malice or through ignorance put the wrong things in there, it could really hurt the whole system. So I think education is also key. But overall, I agree, as long as the transportation costs and doesn't contribute too much to the net.
Thanks for that response. And then finally to you, Shiquita. Do you want me to repeat the question again?
No, I got it.
All right.
So my answer is yes. I think we should have a universal composting system. I remember when we had to recycle and it was so confusing. Now we have labels on the containers and people I still look at the labels sometimes, to be honest, and that's awesome, right? But we have to make it appealing for the community to want to compost, as well as educating them. And when we do educate them on how to compost, we also need to make sure, which is number one, as to why it will make a difference. That's the main thing. People need to know why you want me to compost. Why am I paying extra money to compost? And I believe when they know it's beneficial for the entire community, then I believe they will, just like we are with recycling. So my answer is yes, and I do believe that we need to make it appealing and also to let our community know why why it will make a difference and how it will make a difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the topic of sustainable housing. And this question will begin with Jeremy Johnson for the first response. How would you support adequate housing funding to ensure that everyone who works in Longmont can find a place they can afford to live in? And what additional tools should Longmont be using to help create more housing for all in our community?
Thanks a lot. First thing we looking at, we have to be able to streamline the process of building those new developments, because the longer it takes is the more it gets expensive. The developers are going to generate a cost, which that cost is going to be pushed down to the consumer. When it comes to other environmental impacts, the existing structures that we have, instead of demolishing them and starting over, we need to continue to keep the guts of those buildings and the structural sound buildings, keep them and reuse them. And I mean, that goes all into the restoration and the keeping of the history of downtown Longmont, keeping those things around, and it can lower the entire cost. But when it comes to the workforce homes, if you can keep that cost low, the people that work in Longmont can live in Longmont.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeremy Johnson. And to you, Marcia Martin, how would you support adequate housing funding to ensure everyone who works in Longmont can find an affordable place to live? And what additional tools should Longmont be using to help create more affordable housing for everyone in the community?
Thank you. The idea of exempting workforce housing from the inclusionary zoning fees originated with me. And I think that we are now in the process of making sure that the inclusionaries, that the incentives for building workforce housing are even stronger than they are now. That, combined with land use code changes that support the idea of urban density, added height in certain neighborhoods where it is not harmful, and reclaiming the asphalt by getting people out of their cars and providing a better, cheaper, faster alternative forms of transit, are all things that will help people live where they work, which I would just like to say was on my very first campaign postcard in 2017.
Okay, thank you, Marcia Martin. Aren Rodriguez, to you next. How would you support adequate housing funding to ensure everyone who works in Longmont can find an affordable place to live? And what other tools should the city of Longmont be using to create more housing options for everyone in the community?
Thank you very much. I believe at the end of the day, we're facing the same challenges that the entire Front Range are facing. And as such, I would say that the city of Longmont needs to be, as we have been for many years, a leader, right? We've led in infrastructure improvements. We have done good in water and things like that. And we don't have to worry about water the same way some of our neighbors have to worry about water. And so we need to be a leader. We need to be innovating in what kind of products are coming to the market here in Longmont. We need to make sure that people that want to live in Longmont are allowed to live in Longmont. And that means looking at things, and it's not like container houses necessarily, although a candidate on the panel has been to ND Dwell in Pueblo. There are great products on the market that we need to consider. So
Thanks for that, Aren. And then Tallis, Salamatian, how would you support adequate housing funding to ensure that everybody who works in Longmont also can find an affordable place to live there? And what other tools should the city be deploying to expand housing options for everyone?
Thank you, Liz. This is a very, very important question. And when I first started running, I was speaking to stakeholders in our community. Major employers like Eric Wallace at Left Hand Brewery agree with me that this is a very important issue. When people are able to live in the community that they work, pollution decreases, congestion decreases, staff turnover decreases, quality of life increases, and productivity increases, as well as general quality of life. So I think that there's a lot of benefits to having people live in the community that they work. I think that it's really important that we look at metro districts. Metro districts can reduce the cost of home ownership by 20%. So I think that is a good way to get people into workforce sustainable housing. I think we need to look at innovative solutions like 3D printing using hempcretes, as well as prefab homes that could really reduce the ticket price for getting people into homes. I think home ownership is really key, and I can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Tallis. Shakir Yarbrough, how would you support adequate housing funding to ensure that everybody who works in Longmont can also afford to live there? And what other tools should the city be using to help create more housing for everyone in the community?
Yes, thank you, Liz. This is definitely a passionate subject for many. I myself personally, I wish I had the answer, the 100% answer, because I will make a lot of money. I think all of us will make a lot of money, right? But I feel like we can utilize the ARPA funds. We are getting 12.9 million for the city of Longmont, and let's look at how we can use some of that funding for that opportunity to keep our workforce here in Longmont and create density within Longmont to have these properties that people can afford. Everyone should be able to afford a housing. As myself, I'm the only one who's still renting, but to be able to afford a housing, and I think the ARPA funds will give us the opportunity, if we are responsible and use it equitably, we can come up with a program to where we can use their funds to have affordable housing in the city of Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiquita. And then this question finally to you, Diane Crist. How would you support adequate housing funding to ensure everybody who works in Longmont can also find a place to live? And what other tools should the city be using to create more housing options?
I belonged in a program that was in the Midwest. It was called Keep Green in Your Scene. It emphasized that the more trees we cut down, the less sustainable we are. And it makes me think if we convert all of our land to housing, we're not going to be happy either. We need to keep the trees, keep the green. One thing, I'm a big proponent of the Hyperloop. The point of the Hyperloop is to have a 20-minute commute from some small towns in the surrounding area. A lot of those small towns are looking for development and also already have existing homes that are a lot cheaper, more affordable and attainable for a workforce. And I think it's not so much satisfaction with living in the town where you work, but being able to get to work easily. I hear a lot of people are very frustrated with the amount of time they spend in their cars. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to all the candidates for that. The next topic, climate change and social equity. And we're going to begin with Marcia will answer first for this question. If elected, how would you work to ensure that the most vulnerable members of our community are not disproportionately affected by the impacts of the climate crisis? How would you help to ensure an equity lens when making decisions related to the environment in Longmont? One
Well,
minute.
first of all, I was the climate I was the city council liaison to the Climate Action Task Force, and I am now sitting on the Beneficial Electrification Committee to find out how we make the transition away from natural gas and into sustainable building practices in the city of Longmont. And equity, social equity is a big deal in those deliberations. What we need to understand is that it's a two-edged sword. The most vulnerable, the people who are most precariously housed, the poorest, are most vulnerable to weather events and heat events and all of the terrible consequences of climate change itself, but they are also more vulnerable because they can't afford to make the upgrades by themselves to get into sustainable homes. So we need to not hesitate in upgrading, but to make sure that we have subsidies to take them with us when we go.
Thanks, Marcia. Aren Rodriguez, if elected, how would you work to ensure that the most vulnerable members of the community are not disproportionately affected by the impacts of the climate crisis? And how would you help to ensure that an equity lens is used when making decisions related to Longmont and the environment?
Thank you for the question. I would like to point out that the city has been moving very aggressively towards sustainability in many ways, but also at the same time talking about just transit, as in judicial just transitions. So as we move forward with our efforts to move the city towards electrification, for instance, we have a group that's saying, okay, this is what it's going to take. You know, we got to add these kinds of CARES contributions, CARES as in the city of Longmont providing rebates to those folks who are not so socioeconomically privileged, if you will. And so they get the opportunity to have their utility bill rebated because it's a transition. And so I think that Longmont should go forward with that same program.
Thank you, Aren. Thanks for that. Tallis, Salamatian, next to you, if you're elected, how would you work to ensure that the most vulnerable members of the Longmont community are not disproportionately affected by the impacts of the climate crisis? And how would you ensure that an equity lens is used when making decisions related to the environment in Longmont?
Thank you for the question, Liz. And, the people who are at the lowest segment of our socioeconomics in our community are already being impacted by climate change the most. Someone who went previously already alluded to it very clearly. People who are unhomed or people who are experiencing homelessness, right? Especially tonight, our first frost. I mean, it's really tragic. One solution that I've been speaking with other previous city council members on is a city or community bank that can then be used to empower people to improve the equity situation. Cities already like LA, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Seattle are working on something very similar to this. And it can be used to give low interest loans to people who want to get into their first home that maybe would be unable to get a loan otherwise. I mean, it gives people the ability to retool, to learn and get better education so they can make more money and then be able to get housed in a better house. There's a lot of things that we can do.
Thank you, Tallis. Okay, and Shiquita, now to you.
Yes. Thank you, Liz.
You want me to repeat the question?
No, we can keep it moving.
Right.
So I believe that not only should we be looking through an equitable lens with sustainability and climate change and everything, but we should be looking through an equitable lens no matter what throughout government. So no matter what, I will sit on city council and look through all of our policies through an equitable lens. We have to be all inclusive with our community. We have to look at everyone. those who may not can afford an air conditioner or a heater. How are we providing those resources to our community? And so it's important, I have said this over and over again, that we send out surveys, we ask our community what their needs are, and make sure that we provide the resources to them, educate them, and provide the resources for them, so that we can know that we need to do whatever the needs are for our community. And we have to always look through an equitable lens, not just with climate change.
Thank you, Shiquita. Diane, next to you. How would you support adequate housing funding to ensure everyone who works in Longmont can find a place that they can afford to live? And what tools should Longmont be using to expand housing options for everyone?
I think that might have been the last question. We're on to equitable.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Right. Sorry. I apologize. How would you work to ensure that the most vulnerable members are not disproportionately affected by the climate crisis? And how would you help to ensure that an equity lens is used when making decisions related to the environment in Longmont?
Thanks, Liz. I heard on the business news today that gas prices are high enough. Most families are spending $175 more a month on fuel, on mobile fuel. One of the places where we have affordable housing in Longmont is down on Main Street. And I think the neighborhood there is happy to have that housing. But it's been mentioned a couple of times to me that what is missing there is a grocery store or a place for people that are in affordable housing to be able to walk and, get the little bits that they need and also do some basic shopping. So basically they don't have a lot of parking there, and they may not have automobiles. So it is hard to access the things that they need. So walking neighborhoods, I think, are vital if we're going to help those who are the most vulnerable in our neighborhoods.
Okay, thanks for that, Diane. And the last candidate to answer this question, we now go to Jeremy Johnson. And again, how would you work to ensure that the most vulnerable members of the Longmont community are not disproportionately affected by the ill effects of climate change? And how would you help to ensure that an equity lens is used when making decisions related to the environment and other matters in Longmont?
Thanks. My background states this, that nobody's left behind. Just like at war, no soldiers left on the battlefield. So just the same thing here in Longmont. All our decisions, we have to make sure we think about those people that's in the less situations. We can take one issue. You look at the Safe Haven and Agape. The city has chosen to take the funds away from Agape, over the last 2 years. So we're leaving that fortunate group out there with no funding. So that is one of my main issues. And when we go into those people being able to thrive, bike paths, bike neighborhoods, bike in the city, being able to light those bike paths so people feel comfortable that can't afford cars. So that's one way we can also look at sustainability. But just like other people say, we have to look everything as what is the lower level income people going to think, not just what we think as city council or mayor or whoever, the decision makers. What does the citizens think? How do they feel?
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so we have two more rounds of questions in that final sentence, and I'm sure everybody's getting a little bit tired here, but thanks for all these great responses and paying attention here. So next topic deals with water conservation. As everyone's aware, the Front Range is facing increasingly dry and warmer conditions. This past August, the Department of the Interior declared for the first time that the Colorado River Basin was in a water shortage. And while the drought of 2020 has improved for the time being, climatologist Peter Goebel with the Colorado Climate Center at CSU warns that drought conditions could worsen with record-breaking heat and perhaps a dry winter. What concrete steps should Longmont take to manage and conserve water given anticipated growth combined with climate changes? And Aren Rodriguez, you are first up on that question.
Thank you very much. I would say that I've learned recently by some of our staff members that the city of Longmont engaged in agreements with homeowners associations or neighborhoods about watering their common spaces. And as such, those common spaces are allowed to be watered without regulation. And so I think the city needs to revisit that agreement. Also, any incentive that we can give to homeowners to go with xeriscaping, XERI, xeriscaping, not zero-scaping, as a lot of people say. Xeriscaping would be great. I know the city has, garden in the box and things like that. And as such, I think that the city continues to educate and incentivize people to use landscaping with less water utility. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Tallis, Salamatian, you are second up on this question. Again, dealing with water conservation, recent warnings by CSU climatologists that our drought conditions are likely to worsen, the declaration of a water shortage in the Colorado River Basin for the first time this past August. Given all that and the ever growth that is occurring along the Front Range, communities, people moving in, et cetera, what concrete steps do you believe Longmont should take to manage and conserve water?
It's a very important question. We all need water to survive, right? And the states that are downstream from us are quite parched. There's actually, I was reading The Economist, there's a century-old agreement with downstream states that it needs to get renegotiated in the next decade. So it's very important that we take water very seriously. I was very concerned when I found out that there are no city codes for the use of gray water. And if we are really concerned about conservation, especially with water, we should be able to utilize gray water for flushing and perhaps irrigation. I think that xeriscaping, as the person who went before me said, is very important as well. I grew up in Bakersfield, California, in the desert, and there was a lot of xeriscaping lawns, and I think that they're very attractive. I think that we should also look at the use of private wells in our community, because that takes water out of our water table.
Thank you, Tallis. Shakir Yarbrough, you are up next on what concrete steps should Longmont take to manage and conserve water given anticipated growth and climate change.
Thank you, Liz. Again, like I had mentioned before, I think it's important to let the community know why it's important, why our water is important, right? Educate our community about the resources that the city provides and how they can make a difference, because it's important that our water stay clean as well. I think we can offer homeowners some type of rebate on installing a better sprinkler system, right, for those, or some type of rebate for good action with those who provide good practices. Definitely the grass and watering the grass, there needs to be some type of regulation with that as well. Making sure that they plant water-wise plants, incentivize water reduction, especially from our budget, the city budget and everything, and commercial and agriculture. So it's just important.
Thanks, Shiquita.
Thank you.
And next to you, Diane, Crist, what concrete steps should Longmont take to manage and conserve water given growth combined with climate change?
I mentioned that we have a garden or a micro farm. So water is something that we are constantly talking about. And I'm usually the one that gets elected to talk to the new people that move in the neighborhood. We had some people from, I think they were from Texas or maybe Arizona. And it just seemed like we have a lot of water compared to theirs. So they wanted to water all the time. And it's important to know you only need about an inch of water, if you have a lawn, per week. And anyway, our other neighbor that moved from California had a leak in their irrigation system, in their sprinkler system. And so that's another big loss of good water for everybody. So I almost think there should be a handbook. So I guess I'm on the favor of more education in terms of people who move into the state need to understand how important a resource water is to us. And it just isn't, if you have more money, you can buy more water. And it's not like, you know, if you still have checks, you still have money in your checking account. It runs out. So
Diane. Thanks, Diane. And Jeremy Johnson, to you. Given that
We're good, Liz. I got you. So
Okay.
I got the question.
Excellent.
Save your vocal cords.
Thank you.
So I mean all like everybody's mentioned and most people, education. So utilizing those city services, we have companies that come out and will do sprinkler service on your sprinkler system to make sure that you are getting the proper and maximum efficiency out of all those zones in your yard to minimize the waste there. And also, I mean, looking at the open spaces and parks and places like that the city waters, you know, putting those on that strict policy as well, you know, limiting the amount of water we use will be beneficial for the whole environment and for the whole city. Because like I said, we can't go get it somewhere else because we're getting rid of a lot of it. So, and then like a couple people mentioned the gray water usage, you know, for like golf courses and places like that, being able to utilize, you know, some of that gray water and some of the great city recreational facilities would be amazing.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy Johnson. And then finally to you, Marcia Martin, on this question of water conservation and what Longmont should do in your view to manage and conserve water.
Thank you. Longmont has a very active and professional water advisory board and a very competent water distribution enterprise. Longmont is the best provisioned of all Front Range cities with respect to water rights. And because Colorado water rights water law is written the way it is, we cannot do anything to, for example, reduce our water consumption and return that water to the Colorado River. If we reduced our water consumption, then other Front Range cities would take up the slack. So it's important to understand what we do for water use in that context. But of course, for the future, we should we should adopt all of the local conservation methods that have been mentioned, with the possible exception of gray water, which causes a lot of public health concerns. And
thanks, Marcia. Okay, final question here, and then hopefully we're just gonna have time for you guys to do that one single sentence about your priority. But the last question deals with electric vehicles, and it will go to Tallis Salamatian first. Last month, City Council, as you know, passed a Go EV Cities resolution. This commitment will call for the City of Longmont to transition its municipal fleet, build electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and support a transition of 30% of all vehicles registered within the City of Longmont to zero emissions by 2030 and near 100% of all vehicles by 2050. What steps do you think the city should take to enhance the transition to electric vehicles?
That's a great question, and it's quite timely. My wife and I were actually shopping for EVs a couple weekends ago, and we're continue to shop for them. I think they're great. My brother-in-law works for Tesla. I think that there's really great potential for electric vehicles. I think the infrastructure needs to be, improved upon, as you alluded to with the charging stations. I think that ideally, we will see the realization of some more higher capacity batteries. I know solid state lithium is coming around. I personally, one of my companies that I worked with, New Promethean, was working on solid state graphene batteries. So I think energy storage is a big component of this. There was a recent Economist article that talked about hydrogen as a storage medium. There's a lot of things that go into this question. I'm not sure if I can get up to all of them within a minute. Oh, well, obviously I can't get to them all in a minute.
Yeah. Thank you for that response, Tallis. Shiquita, you're up next. What steps do you think the City of Longmont should take to meet its recent commitment to expand its municipal fleet, build electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and support a transition of 30% of all vehicles registered in the city of Longmont to zero emissions by 2030 and 100% of all vehicles by 2050.
You know, I would say that I think that it's definitely a great resolution for sure. But the availability of charging stations is, you know, that's an issue. So we need to make sure that that we have those charging stations available when we get ready to transition into that 100% by 2050. And then again, we make sure that we look through an equitable lens, because not everybody can get an electric vehicle. And we also know that when you go and pay, you know, get your sticker, it's more money to get a sticker for an electric vehicle. And so we have to look through an equitable lens again and make sure we educate our community and let them know why it's important that we need to be electric. So again, back to the community and also educating our community and make sure we look through an equitable lens as we transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiquita. And now Diane, Crist, to you. Same question. Shall I repeat it?
No, I got it. Thank you, Liz. I think when we're talking about city planning, it's like we're thinking about a symphony. All these parts have to work together and they all have to be in tune, and then we can make some beautiful music. One of the things about the Hyperloop, they say it's within 9 years of realization. Realize that puts us at 2030, and engineers will tweak with it until it is 2030 unless we push them a little bit faster. Anyway, when that Hyperloop comes through, we're going to need a station, and we're going to need to think about the things that we need to put in that station. I think the transition initially will be people want to park their cars at either end, but I think they'll be tired of that very quickly and want to grab some public transportation, you know, a CNG bus or electric vehicles that can drive you to your destination and return to the station without a driver. That is very likely, and the technology is keeping up with the trend. So I think the Hyperloop is something we need to help to orchestrate our city planning.
Thank you for that, Diane. And now, Jeremy Johnson, your thoughts about what steps Longmont should take to enhance its transition to electric vehicles and meet its new commitments.
Thanks a lot. I mean, first thing first, I mean, we have to make sure that we continue to look through the equitable lens, because most people won't be able to afford that initiative unless we be able to bring more high-paying jobs to the city of Longmont and to support the people to bring them up to make that affordable. And also, when we look at the charging stations, if you look at those charging stations, just take a walk around Longmont. Those charging stations, the asphalt has to be ripped out and concrete has to be poured, because the asphalt holds water. And with electricity sitting on water is not going to be a great outcome. So we need to look at the impacts of that for the construction of the charging stations. If you look at the one they just redid out at Walmart at Highway 66, that's why they tore all that out and put down the concrete, because of the water that was being held underneath the asphalt. But at the end of the day, we have to think about the complete citizens of Longmont, and then what is going to be the most cost-effective way to make sure no one's left behind.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeremy Johnson. And now Marcia Martin.
Thank you. Well, the equity lens says that people should drive fewer cars altogether. The equity lens says that we provide alternative mechanisms other than car ownership. So in other words, yeah, I'm really a fan of the electric shuttle plan. That's another thing that was on my very first campaign postcard. But what we need to do is move away from private automobile ownership, because electric cars never wear out. And if you have ride sharing, whether the vehicles are autonomous or not, it can be in operation all the time, and people can be using it all the time instead of it costing money sitting in your garage. So we don't really want to think in terms of car ownership. I've moved away from wanting an electric vehicle to wanting to never own another car. And I think that is a thing that we should look at and design our city that way.
Thanks a lot for that, Marcia Martin. And Aren Rodriguez, you get to wrap up this question for the group. What steps should Longmont take to enhance its transition to electric vehicles?
So I think the easy answer to this is charging stations. The more charging stations, the more feasible it is for there to be electric vehicles, because obviously there's many gas stations for internal combustion engine cars. It's easy to go get gas. It's a little bit more difficult to find a place where you can go and charge your car if you don't get to charge it at home, if you will. And so that's the thing, is that if you can't charge it at home, there's got to be a place to go. And so the more charging stations that we can put in town, because the city has been proactive. And that's what I will say, there are people on this panel that will probably agree with me, maybe not, but more charging stations is like more gas stations. And the easier it is, the more people will do it. And that's what I think.
Okay, thanks for that, Aren, and thanks to all the candidates for these excellent responses with such a short amount of time for all these really important issues and tough questions. We have 2 minutes left, and Ryan is now on the screen now, about to wrap it up. But we do want to hear from each and every one of you. In lieu of a closing statement, we just asked a single question of all of the candidates. So beginning with Ryan, with Tallis Salamatian first. In one sentence, please tell us, what is your number one priority, if elected, when it comes to the sustainability of our community? And I'll just call each of your names, going up the alphabet from Tallis and ending with Shiquita.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate it. When I was in grad school, I took a class called Environmental Economics.
One sentence. Sorry.
It's one sentence. Yeah, and we learned about the triple bottom line, which has to be prioritized evenly amongst those three components. And the three components are the environment, social, aka the labor, and economics. So unless we prioritize all of them evenly, we're not going to have an effective, sustainable solution.
Okay, thank you for that, Tallis. And then Aren Rodriguez, if elected, what is your number one priority when it comes to sustainability of our community, in one sentence?
My hope is that people that work in Longmont live in Longmont.
Marcia Martin, one sentence. Number one priority when it comes to the sustainability of our community.
We need to make sure that everyone is equitably housed in a sustainable manner.
And Jeremy Johnson, your single sentence, what your number one priority is when it comes to sustainability of the Longmont community.
Making sure everyone in Longmont has a voice that will be heard and not be represented by a group, but by their own opinions.
And Diane Crist, one sentence.
We need to envision our town, our village, around future technology like the Hyperloop, which can be built with with private funds, just like the Bright Line in Miami now for $2 billion. That would cover the first 40 miles of our Hyperloop.
Thank you, Diane. And Shakir Yarbrough, your sentence.
Number one priority is to continue our shift to renewable energy and in an equitable manner that lifts the entire community up, and to make sure we continue to ask the experts best practices that will benefit our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you. It was a pleasure to moderate this event and to hear all of your ideas. And I salute all of you for your wish to serve the community. So it was a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you. Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. What a solid effort. That was a lot of work. I want to put a big thanks in to Liz Lane, our moderator, and Naomi, our timekeeper. And before we get to all the thank yous, I want to take a moment to say, vote. Ballots must be turned in by 7 p.m. on November 2nd, 2021. Ballots were mailed on October 8th. I got mine today. If you are voting by mail, be sure to have your ballot in the mail by October 25th and register for ballot tracking at bouldercountyvotes.org. Thanks again to all of you for joining us this evening. Couldn't happen without you. I'd like to particularly thank our partners. First off, Anne Marie Jensen with Echo. Thank you.
I don't need to say anything. We're past time, so
All
thank you.
righty. Zan Jones from EcoCycle. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank all the thought and energy you all have put into these answers and your campaigns. And I think Longmont's in good hands. And I look forward to working with all of you after the elections.
Thanks, Zan. And to all of you candidates, thank you for stepping up to lead. That is a big deal. Democracy can't happen without you. Now, everybody go out and vote. Have a great night. Thank you so much.